She once vowed to stand by him until his very last breath, but in the end, she chose power over love. Underscore, their wedding was watched by millions. A modern fairy tale built on passion, glamour, and a dangerous promise. Underscore, but behind the palace gates, shadows were gathering. Underscore, he lay in a hospital bed, frail, breath shallow, clinging to life. And while the world waited for her to appear by his side, she was already gone. Underscore, secret meetings in Geneva, whispers of betrayal, and a looming £400 million divorce bombshell that no one saw coming. Underscore, tabloids spun the headlines. Insiders leaked dark truths. And somewhere behind closed doors, a royal legacy began to unravel. Underscore, did she walk away? Or was she pushed? Underscore, was it power she truly wanted? Or something far more dangerous? Underscore, and above all, how do you betray the one person who once gave you everything? Underscore, for over 5 decades, the story of Charles and Camilla has been one of scandal, obsession, and survival. Underscore, they defied expectations, tore through traditions, and fought tooth and nail to be together, despite the judgment of a nation and the fury of family that never truly forgave them. Underscore, Camilla was once the woman the public hated to love, the infamous third person in the world's most watched marriage. But in the end, she won. Underscore, against all odds, she became queen. Underscore, but power always comes at a cost. Underscore, now, in March 2025, the fairy tale is fraying at the edges. King Charles, 76, has been quietly undergoing treatment for cancer, a diagnosis the palace confirmed only months ago. Understood? The world watches closely. Cameras lined outside the London clinic. Crowds whispering prayers. Everyone waiting to see one thing. Camilla by his side. Understood? But something felt off. Understood? She arrived once. Briefly. A carefully staged appearance, smiling, holding his hand, the perfect image of royal devotion, underscore, and then nothing, underscore, she vanished. No public updates, no bedside vigils, no palace-issued photos of unity, just silence, underscore. Inside those hospital walls, Charles was hopeful, vulnerable, still believing in the woman who once promised to never leave him again, underscore. But days turned into weeks, and every footstep that wasn't hers chipped away at a spirit. Understood? Behind the scenes, insiders whispered of tension, of phone calls ignored, of a queen with other priorities. Underscore? And for the first time in years, even his most loyal aides began to ask the unthinkable. Was a king being abandoned by the only person he ever truly trusted? Underscore? Because this wasn't just about marriage. It was about monarchy. Underscore, and the institution, already fragile, already fractured, was about to crack. Understood? Not in front of cameras, but behind closed doors where love, loyalty, and legacy would all be put to the test. Underscore, to understand this moment, this betrayal, we have to go back. Underscore, before the crowns, before the cameras, before the chaos. Underscore, Charles met Camilla in the early 1970s. She was bold, warm, and utterly unlike anyone the palace had prepared him for. Understood? They fell fast. But love for Windsor was never simple. Understood? Duty pulled them apart. And Charles was pushed into a very different kind of marriage. Understood? Camilla married another. Charles married Diana. And history was changed forever. Understood? But behind every royal photo op, behind every smile, the flame never went out. Their affair became one of the most infamous scandals in modern royal history. Tapes, tabloids, tears, Diana's haunting interview. There were 3 of us in this marriage. The world took sides, and Charles paid the price. He was mocked, blamed, seen as cold, even unfit to be king. But still, he chose Camilla. He gave up popularity, weathered public hatred, faced down the ghost of Diana that loomed over everything. Understood? And in 2005, after years of damage control and careful image rebranding, he finally married the woman he'd loved all along. Camilla went from mistress to duchess, from duchess to queen consort, a climb few thought possible. By his side was her son, Tom Parker Bowles. Fiercely loyal, always protective. He moved through palace halls not as a royal, but with quiet influence. Underscore, together, Charles and Camilla built a tight inner circle. Trusted aides, private advisors, loyal friends. A new court, less traditional, more private, more Camilla. Underscore, and slowly, a new deal was struck with the public. They wouldn't ask for love, only respect. In return, Charles and Camilla would show unity. Always, underscore, no drama, no riffs, a dignified front, underscore. But behind the scenes, Charles believed something deeper, that they were in this together. Through illness, scandal, aging, all of it, underscore, that she understood what he gave up, that she would never leave him, underscore. He trusted her with his heart and his crown, underscore, until now, first, a single article buried beneath stories of hospital updates and royal appearances, underscore, but within 48 hours, it had exploded, underscore. Queen Camilla in Geneva for private investment summit, royal access questioned. At first, it seemed innocuous, a brief appearance at a conference, a speech, smiles, a few handshakes, but then the details started to surface. Underscore, Camilla hadn't just attended. She negotiated. Underscore, behind closed doors in a Geneva hotel suite, she'd met with global investors, not as queen, but as Camilla Parker Bowles, mother of Tom Parker Bowles. Underscore, documents leaked, deals signed, and suddenly royal insiders were forced to confront an unthinkable truth. The Queen had allegedly used her royal status to secure multi-million-pound investments for her son's private food ventures. Underscore, it wasn't just bad optics. It was a betrayal of royal protocol, a breach of the sacred rule. The crown served the people, not personal gain. And Charles? He didn't hear it from her. He heard it from an aide. Underscore, alone in his hospital bed, pale, weak, clinging to dignity in a paper gown. He was handed a red folder marked urgent, private. Underscore, inside were briefings, screenshots, a timeline, and one sentence that would rattle him to his core. Her Majesty declined to notify the palace in advance. Underscore, he stared at the words, then stared at the ceiling. The silence in that room was deafening. Underscore, for a man who had sacrificed everything to legitimize their union, to bring her into the system, it was the ultimate betrayal. Underscore, while he was fighting cancer, she was fighting for capital. Underscore, the press pounced. Underscore, whereas Camilla, why was the Queen in Geneva without royal clearance? Was King Charles kept in the dark? Morning shows speculated, evening panels debated, and social media turned brutal. Underscore, royal aid scrambled. Statements were drafted, then retracted. Photos of Charles were quietly released to regain sympathy. But nothing worked. Underscore, because Camilla was still missing. Underscore, no public apology. No clarification. Not even a denial. Just silence. Underscore, behind closed doors, palace officials were in crisis mode. Damage control teams clashed with longtime advisors. Should they protect the monarchy or protect the king? Underscore, and in the middle of it all, Charles. Underscore, he was no longer just a sick man. He was a betrayed husband, a wounded monarch, a father, a king. Underscore, he had to choose loyalty to the woman he loved or to the crown he'd waited his whole life to wear. Underscore, because make no mistake, this wasn't just betrayal. This was a power play. Underscore, if the allegations were true, Camilla had quietly built her own sphere of influence, one that operated outside the traditional royal order, one that included her son, private financiers, and connections loyal to her, not the throne. Underscore, and now, the cracks in their marriage weren't just personal. They were constitutional. Underscore, what began as a love story had turned into a cold, calculated war for control. Underscore, and the king was running out of time to act. Underscore, Clarence House was quiet when Charles returned. Underscore, the halls that once echoed with staff footsteps and gentle chatter now felt frozen in time, like everyone was holding their breath. Underscore, physically, the king was healing. The treatments had slowed. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. But emotionally, He was a shell. Undersir, his smile was mechanical, his words clipped. He no longer asked where Camilla was, because he already knew. Undersir, she had returned to the palace a few days prior, quietly, with no press fanfare, no apology, no explanations. Undersir, and between them, only silence. Undersir, meals taken in different rooms. Conversations filtered through aides. Days passed without eye contact. Nights passed without a word. Underscore. Meanwhile, William and Catherine's presence grew stronger. Underscore. They stepped up public duties, issued statements, held hands at hospital visits. To the public, they were the image of stability. Underscore. But inside the palace, the whispers grew louder. Underscore. William is preparing. Camilla has lost a room. The crown is shifting. Underscore. And then the storm broke. Underscore. It was a Tuesday. The rain came down in heavy sheets, tapping against the leaded windows like a warning. Underscore. Charles sat alone in his study, surrounded by leather-bound books and a half-drunk cup of Earl Grey, his skin pale, his fingers trembling slightly as he turned a page he wasn't reading. Underscore. And then the door opened. Underscore. She entered, not as his wife, but as something else. Camilla was composed, cold, flanked by two strangers in tailored suits, divorce lawyers. Underscore. One placed a thick envelope on the table before him, cream parchment, gold seal, a single line handwritten at the top. Proposed divorce settlement, confidential. Underscore. Charles didn't speak, just stared. Underscore. Camilla broke the silence, her voice flat, rehearsed. Not cruel, just final. Underscore. She was requesting a settlement for £100 million in exchange for silence. No tell-alls, no interviews, no memoirs, no scandal. Underscore. Cooperation for a price. Underscore. Charles blinked slowly, as if his mind couldn't quite absorb the moment. Underscore. This wasn't just betrayal. It was blackmail, wrapped in legalese and polished smiles. Underscore. The woman he had defended for decades against family, public, and press was now leveraging his secrets for wealth. Underscore. He felt it then. The slow, burning weight of everything collapsing. The decades of loyalty. The scandals he endured. The throne he waited for. All of it reduced to an envelope and a number. Underscore. And outside, the rain kept falling. Underscore. The antique clock on the mantel ticked once. Twice. Underscore. Camilla's eyes didn't waver. And for the first time in their long, twisted love story, Charles understood something terrible. Underscore. She was never coming back. Underscore. The public didn't hear about the confrontation for weeks, but they felt it. Underscore. Camilla began appearing alone, spotted leaving private clubs in Mayfair, dining quietly in Geneva, even photographed at her Wiltshire estate, far from the palaces. No crown, no ring, no comment. Underscore. Charles, meanwhile, returned to carefully controlled public life. A walkabout here, a charity event there, always smiling, always tired, and always alone. Underscore. Questions came in hushed tones. Where's the Queen? Why hasn't she visited Sandringham? Are they separated? Underscore. And then came the leak. Underscore. An unnamed Clarence House source, senior, trusted and deliberate, whispered the word separation to a major broadsheet. Not divorce, not scandal, just that one word. But it was enough. Underscore. Within hours, media frenzy returned. Analysts pored over body language. Papers ran timelines. Pundits speculated about who betrayed whom. Underscore. And in the shadows, lawyers worked tirelessly. Underscore. For £100 million. That was the number. Quiet negotiations began, whispered between teams, hidden in footnotes, buried in legalese. Would Charles pay to protect the crown? Would Camilla speak if he didn't? Underscore. The risk was enormous. Camilla knew everything. The inner workings of the monarchy, private conversations, Charles's health, the true nature of certain royal relationships. Underscore. Buckingham Palace, under mounting pressure, finally released a statement. For the Prince and Princess of Wales became his anchor, his advisors, his shield. Underscore. William was no longer just the heir. He was the future. Unsure, and insiders began to whisper. Was the crown quietly transitioning? Not formally, not yet, but emotionally, publicly, a new era was beginning. Underscore. Meanwhile, royal historians took to the airwaves. Underscore. Some painted Camilla as pragmatic, a survivor, a woman who had endured decades of public cruelty and finally chose her independence. Underscore. Others weren't so kind. Underscore. They spoke of ambition, opportunism, of a queen who never quite belonged, and who may have always had an exit plan. Underscore. And slowly, the tide began to turn. Underscore. Public sympathy, once reserved for Diana, then cautiously extended Camilla, now began drifting back to Charles. Underscore. A man who had waited 70 years for the throne, only to ascend with cancer in his blood and betrayal in his bed. Underscore. In private, Charles withdrew. Long walks, quiet lunches, fewer meetings, more reflection. Those closest to him say he changed. Not bitter, just tired, as if the weight of kingship had finally settled into his bones. He often asked a question aloud, more to himself than anyone else. What is loyalty if it's not for the worst of times? Underscore. He had given Camilla everything. His youth, his reputation, his trust. And now, at the end of it all, he was left with the same thing he began with, a title, a burden, and a silence no crown could fill. Underscore. The cameras were waiting. The flashbulbs popped in rhythm as King Charles stepped out of the car, flanked by aides, his expression unreadable. Underscore. It was his first major public appearance since the Geneva scandal, a commemorative service at St. Paul's Cathedral. The kind of duty he never avoided. The kind of silence he knew how to keep. Underscore. His suit was immaculate, his steps measured, his face pale but composed. Underscore. But there was one thing everyone noticed. Underscore. Camilla was not there. Underscore. No hand to hold, no smile to share, no queen at his side. Underscore. The palace offered no explanation, and Charles, as always, said nothing. But insiders began to whisper. Wills were being rewritten, titles reconsidered, trust reevaluated. Underscore. The once inseparable pair, who'd fought so hard to stand side by side, were now existing on opposite ends of monarchy. And as one insider quietly shared, he's no longer protecting her. He's protecting the crown. There's a sadness to it all, not just personal loss, but the echo of a kingdom shifting, a family fracturing, a legacy rewritten in real time. Because in the end, the crown is heavier when trust is broken. Behind the robes and rituals, behind the balcony waves and state dinners, there's a man, aging, betrayed, still wearing the weight of love turned into strategy. And the questions linger like fog over the palace grounds. Will Charles sacrifice it all to keep the silence? Or will the secret she holds, the ones only he knows the danger of, force his hand? Will the monarchy emerge from this fractured or reborn? Or is this just the beginning of a deeper war, one that isn't about scandal but survival? Because the war for the crown isn't fought on battlefields. It's fought in silence and shadows behind palace doors. Where love is currency, power is fragile, and no vow, not even one made before God, is immune to ambition. Fade to black. Haunting orchestral music swells, then fades,